Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition, Battle Report 22, 2,000 points of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle versus Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. This will be Big Rulebook, Maelstrom of War Mission, Cleanse and Capture. Let's begin by taking a quick look around the board at where the terrain is and where the objective markers have been placed.
So, starting over in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 3 right here next to this ruin. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 6 right down here near the crater. And in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 2 right here next to this ruin. Over on this side of the board, we have this 2 foot by 2 foot section with objective marker 5 right here within the ruin. Moving over to this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 4 right here next to this building. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 1 right here next to this ruin. A reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle army will have 9 command points for this battle report, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch army will have 8 plus D3 thanks to the stratagem that they need to use in order to gain the second Hellforged artifact. And so at the beginning of the game, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch army needs to roll their D3 extra command points thanks to Kairos Fateweaver, and here's the roll, getting a 2, which means they will obtain 1 additional command point for a total of 9 command points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch army. So now we need to roll for the deployment map that the two armies will be playing on today, and here's the dice roll, getting a 4, which is Hammer and Anvil. So on a roll of a 1, 2, or a 3, the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will deploy on this side, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will deploy on the far side. On a 4, 5, or 6, Tzeentch will instead deploy on the near side, and Nurgle will deploy on the far side. And so here's the roll. Rolling a 5, which means Tzeentch will deploy on the near side, and Nurgle will deploy on the far side. On a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will begin deploying first. On a roll of a 4, 5, or 6, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying first. And rolling a 4, so the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying first. We will be back after the deployment.
So the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch army began to deploy first, and they also finished deploying first because both sides had 10 units to deploy, and so therefore the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will go first unless the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are able to seize the initiative. Let's take a quick look at where both armies placed all of their units on the board, starting with the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch.
So starting with the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch deployment, going from left to right from the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle perspective, we have the first Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings, the first squad of 6 Screamers, the first squad of Pink Horrors sitting on objective marker 5, Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff, the Warlord Kairos Fateweaver, the other Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, the second squad of Pink Horrors sitting on objective marker 2, the third squad of Pink Horrors, this is the squad with the icon and the instrument, the second squad of Screamers, and the second Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings. Moving over to the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle deployment, going from left to right from Tzeentch's perspective, we have the first squad of Plague Drones, the first Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the first squad of Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 3, the Great Unclean One armed with the Doomsday Bell and Corruption, the second squad of Plague Drones, the second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the second Plague Bearer squad sitting on objective marker 1, the Great Unclean One armed with Doomsday Bell and Plague Flail, the third squad of Plague Bearers, and finally on the edge of the map, the Warlord Rodigus. So now the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will attempt to seize the initiative, and they are looking for 6, and they fail to get it. So let's go into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1.
Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 9 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle also have 9 command points available.
Since this is the mission, Cleanse and Capture, at the beginning of their turn, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch drew 3 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Secure Objective 2, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 2 at the end of your turn. Priority orders received: when this tactical objective is generated, immediately generate a bonus tactical objective. This does not count towards the number of active tactical objectives you currently have in play. Your Warlord is the only unit that can be used to achieve the bonus tactical objective. They must be the only unit used to control an objective marker, the unit that destroys the last model in an enemy unit, and so on. If you achieve this, you score both the number of victory points stated on the bonus tactical objective and an additional 3 victory points. If this tactical objective is discarded, so too is the bonus tactical objective. And the bonus tactical objective is Area Denial. Score 1 victory point if there are no enemy models within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield at the end of your turn. If there are no enemy models within 12 inches of the center of the battlefield at the end of your turn, score D3 victory points instead. And finally, Scour the Skies. Score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy unit that can fly was destroyed during this turn. And Objective Marker 2 is this one right here, currently being held by this squad of Pink Horrors. So going into the movement phase, for Tzeentch turn 1, this squad of Pink Horrors will remain still. This squad of Pink Horrors will also remain still. This squad of Pink Horrors is going to move up the board up to 6 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And they will get to add 1 to this roll thanks to the instrument within the squad. So here's their advance roll, getting 5 inches, which becomes a 6, which means they will have 12 inches of total movement. And they will all finish their movement up here, and now they are within 3 inches of the center of Objective Marker 6, not that that matters for this turn. Next, this squad of Screamers is going to move up the board towards the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, up to 16 inches. And they will finish up their move here, moving just under 12 inches. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up the board 12 inches in order to stay behind the Screamers. And he will finish his movement here. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch is simply going to hop over to the other side of the wall that's in front of him, up to 12 inches. And the Demon Prince will finish his movement right here. Next, this squad of Screamers is going to move up the board and jumping over the wall in front of them, up to 16 inches. And the Screamers will finish up their movement here in a nice straight line, about 8.5 inches away from this squad of Plague Bearers. Next, this Lord of Change, with the Rod of Sorcery, is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, towards the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, and he will finish his movement right here. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. Finally, Kairos Fateweaver, the Warlord, will also move up the board up to 12 inches, and Kairos Fateweaver will end his movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, they will begin by using the stratagem Locus of Conjuration for 2 command points, which will drop them from 9 down to 7. Use this stratagem at the start of your Psychic phase. Select a Tzeentch demon character from your army until the end of the phase. You can re-roll any failed Psychic tests made for friendly Tzeentch demon units within 6 inches of the model. And so the target of the stratagem will be the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, but that does mean that Kairos Fateweaver and this squad of Pink Horrors are both within 6 inches and therefore will get to benefit from it. So this Demon Prince of Tzeentch with Wings is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones because they are the closest visible enemy unit and they are within 18 inches. Smite has a warp charge value of 5 and it goes off with a 10. The Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings, the one that's sitting right behind the target Plague Drone unit, will attempt to deny the Witch, needing an 11 or higher, and also rolling a 10, therefore failing to deny the Witch. And it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. Plague Drones, of course, have disgustingly resilient, so looking for 5 ups, and saving 1 and failing 2. Plague drones have 4 wounds apiece, and so one of the plague drones in the back will go from 4 starting wounds down to 2. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Bearers because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. We have a new match to play rule thanks to the big FAQ number 1 from 2018, which adds to Psychic Focus, and the addition is unless the Psyker attempting to manifest Smite has either the Brotherhood of Psykers or Brotherhood of Sorcerers ability, you must add 1 to the warp charge value of Smite for each attempt, whether successful or not, that has been made to manifest Smite during a given Psychic phase to a maximum warp charge of 11. So thanks to that, Smite is now worth 6, and it does go off with a 6. However, Rodigus will attempt to deny the Witch, needing at least a 7, and he does get the 7. And so that Smite will not go off, and it raises the warp charge cost of the next Smite. We will now move on to Kairos Fateweaver, who will attempt to manifest Flickering Flames onto this squad of Pink Horrors. So Flickering Flames has a warp charge value of 5. And he gets to add 2 thanks to his Psychic test bonus, and it will go off. However, the other Demon Prince, sitting behind the other Plague Drone squad, will attempt to deny the Witch. So needing at least an 8, and fails to deny. So Flickering Flames will go off, which means, so until the start of the next Chaos Demons of Tzeentch Psychic phase, that squad of Pink Horrors gets to add 1 to wound rolls with shooting attacks. Kairos Fateweaver will now attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate, which has a warp charge value of 6, and he does get it with an 8. The Great Unclean One, sitting in between the 2 Plague Drone squads, will attempt to deny the Witch, needing at least a 9, and fails. So the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch can re-roll a single dice roll later during their turn. Finally, Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plague Drone squad that's right in front of him, the squad that has not taken any damage because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. So Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and he gets it by rolling a 10 thanks to his Psychic test bonus. The other Great Unclean One, the one that's not in between the 2 Plague Drone squads, who also happens to have a Plague Flail, he will attempt to deny the Witch, needing at least an 11, and he fails with a 9. So this will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds, 2 disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing both of them, so it will not go off. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. And then he will attempt to manifest Treason of Tzeentch onto this Great Unclean One because he is also within 18 inches, but slightly further away from the Plague Drones, so that's why the Smite is going onto the Plague Drones. Starting with Smite, which now needs an 8. And he does get it with a 9 thanks to his Psychic test bonus. Unfortunately for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, they no longer have any units within 24 inches that can still make a Deny the Witch test. The only one left is Rodigus, with 1 Deny the Witch test left available, but he is over 24 inches away. So the Smite will go through, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do just 1 mortal wound. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which will fail. So 1 regular Plague Drone in the back will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Now for Treason of Tzeentch onto the Great Unclean One, which has a warp charge value of 8. And he does get it with a 9 as well, thanks to his Psychic test bonus. And once again, no Deny the Witch tests. So now the Lord of Change will roll 2 dice, and if it is greater than the Great Unclean One's leadership, it will become a Chaos Demon of Tzeentch model for the rest of this player turn until the end of the fight phase. The Great Unclean One has a leadership of 10, so looking for either an 11 or a 12, and getting a 10. So the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch army is going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 7 down to 6 in order to reroll that 4. And here's the reroll, and getting an 11. So the Great Unclean One is now possessed by Tzeentch until the end of the fight phase. Oh, that's bad for Nurgle. Next, this Lord of Change with the Rod of Sorcery will attempt to manifest Smite and Bolt of Change onto this Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Now I realize it does not have to be the closest visible enemy unit for the Bolt of Change, but might as well fire both at the same target. So the Lord of Change will fire Smite and the Bolt of Change onto this Great Unclean One. So Smite now has a warp charge value of 9, and he fails with a 6, thanks to his Psychic Test bonus. And they will not try to reroll that with the Gaze of Fate. So now for Bolt of Change, which needs an 8, and that also fails. So neither Psychic power will go off. Finally, this squad of Pink Horrors is going to attempt to manifest Smite. And they will attempt to manifest Smite from this model right here, this Pink Horror on the edge. And that is important because that means the closest visible enemy unit is this squad of Plague Drones and not the Great Unclean One. Since they only roll 1 dice when attempting to manifest the Smite power, they get to take advantage of the loophole so they don't have to worry about the warp charge of Smite becoming more expensive. So they still only need to roll a 5 or a 6. And fail, but get to reroll thanks to the Lord of Change and the stratagem Locus of Conjuration that was used at the beginning of the phase. So here's the reroll, and it still fails. Going into the shooting phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, this squad of 10 Pink Horrors are going to fire their Coruscating Flames into this squad of Plague Drones, since it is an assault weapon, and so they can fire it even after advancing, and all 10 Pink Horrors are within 18 inches of a Plague Drone. 20 shots hitting on 5s thanks to advancing, and getting a very solid 12 hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, but adding 1 thanks to Flickering Flames being successfully manifested, so actually wounding on 4s. And that made a slight difference. So getting 6 wounds. 6 5-up invulnerable saves. Passing 2 and failing 4. 1 damage apiece, so 4 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls. Passing 2 more, but still failing 2. And that does mean that the wounded Plague Drone has its final 2 wounds removed, and it is killed off from the battlefield. Going into the assault phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, they have 2 charges to declare. The first of which is this Great Unclean One, which is under Tzeentch's spell, will declare a charge onto this squad of Plague Drones. And he will also declare a multi-charge into this squad of Plague Bearers in the back. And he is about 2.5, just over 2.5 inches away from the Plague Drones and just over 3 inches away from the Plague Bearers. But because he needs to charge through a crater, essentially he'll have to roll a 3-inch charge to make it in. And then this squad of Screamers is going to charge into this squad of Plague Bearers, and they are just over 8.5 inches away. So they will need an 8-inch charge. And let's start with the Screamers. No Overwatch from the Plague Bearers, so they need an 8-inch charge, and they fail with the double 1. And they will choose to not re-roll that. So finally, we will do the charge from the Great Unclean One into the Plague Bearers and the Plague Drones, which means we will have to resolve Overwatch from the Plague Drones first. So Overwatching with the Death's Heads from the Plague Drones. 10 shots total, hitting on 6s. And getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s. And failing to wound. So now for the charge distance from the Great Unclean One, and he rolls 8 inches. So he will definitely make it in. And the Great Unclean One is now locked in combat with both the Plague Bearers and the Plague Drones. And so the Great Unclean One will strike first. And so first we need to resolve the Great Unclean One's Crushing Bulk, since he made a successful charge. On a 4-up, which he gets, he can pick an enemy unit to inflict a mortal wound upon that he is in combat with. And so he will place the mortal wound onto the Plague Drones. So they get a disgustingly resilient roll, which they fail. And so a Plague Drone in the back will go from 4 starting wounds down to 3 left. The Great Unclean One has 5 attacks base, since he's at full health, and he will use all 5 attacks with the Hellforged artifact Corruption, and he will place all 5 attacks onto the Plague Drones, hitting on 2s. And getting 5 hits. Strength 9 with Corruption against Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. getting 3 wounds and 2 rerolls thanks to corruption. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more wound and 1 fail. And of course, rolling no wound rolls of 6s, so none of the attacks get +1 damage thanks to the Locus of Virulence. But first we have to resolve the invulns, so 4 5-up invulnerable saves. Wow! And passing 3 of them. Failing 1. And Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 9 down to 8 in order to reroll that 2. And here's the reroll, which still fails. And it does do D3 damage, and it does 2 damage, 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passes 1, failing 1. So the wounded plague drone will go from 3 wounds down to 2. Now for the great unclean ones, attendants, claws, and teeth, which will also attack the plague drones with D6 attacks, getting 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. Strength 2 versus toughness 5 means wounding on 6s. And re-rolling the 1 thanks to the attack. And here's the re-roll, getting a 5 of course, but thanks to the Locus of Virulence, if it gets past the invulnerable save, it will do 2 damage instead of 1. But first, 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. So it will do 2 damage, 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passes both of them. And so fortunately for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, as far as I can tell from the rules, even if you are within an inch, you are not forced to fight in the fight phase. And so therefore the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will choose not to select any of their own units to fight in the fight phase or pile in, and therefore the fight phase is over, with the Great Unclean One simply doing 2 wounds to one of the plague drones. Now that I think about it, they probably didn't even have to overwatch. Luckily it didn't do anything. So going into the morale phase, the Great Unclean One is now back under Nurgle's control, which of course means as a greater demon that the Plague Drone squad, which is the only squad that lost any models this turn, can use the Great Unclean One's leadership of 10 for its morale check, which means it's impossible to fail. However, they will still roll, because if they roll 1, they get the slain Plague Drone back. And so here's that dice roll. Rolling a 5. Now that it's a new phase though, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, bringing them from 8 down to 7 in order to reroll that dice roll. Looking for a 1 and rolling a 6 of course, so they will not get the slain Plague Drone back. I also just realized right now that Tzeentch did not use their dice reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate. So sadly, that was wasted this turn. Taking a quick look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch did successfully secure Objective 2 for 1 victory point, and they did successfully complete Area Denial, and since it's part of priority orders received, they get 3 plus D3 victory points, thanks to no enemy units within 12 inches of the center of the battlefield. So here's the D3 roll, getting a 3 of course, which means that tactical objective card is worth 6 victory points. And they did not complete Scour the Skies, however, they will hold on to that one.
And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 1, the score currently sits at 7 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch and 0 victory points for Chaos Demons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 7 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 6 command points available.
Thanks to the scenario at the beginning of their turn, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle drew 3 brand new tactical objective cards, and they drew Secure Objective 2, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 2 at the end of your turn. The Great Game, roll dice at the end of each turn. After generating this objective, score that number of victory points if you control exactly that number of objective markers. For example, if you roll a 3, you will score 3 victory points if you control 3 objective markers. And finally, Blood and Guts. Score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during the fight phase of this turn. If 3 or more enemy units were destroyed during the fight phase of this turn, score D3 victory points instead. Also, at the start of the Chaos Demons of turn 1, this squad of Plague Drones has a model missing thanks to being slain in Tzeentch turn 1, and since they are within 7 inches of a Great Unclean One with a Doomsday Bell, they get to roll a dice, and on a 4-up, a slain model is returned to the unit. Thanks to the special rule Reverberating Summons, and they get it with a 6. So a single slain model is returned to that Plague Drone unit. And just like that, this Plague Drone is back, and this squad is up to full health, minus the 2 wounds missing from one of the Plague Drones. So going into the movement phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, this squad of Plague Drones is going to move up the board up to 10 inches, and the Plague Drone squad will end its movement right here. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And he will finish his movement right here. This Great Unclean One is going to move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on Objective Marker 3 will remain still. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on Objective Marker 1 will also remain still. This squad of Plague Drones is going to move up the board towards the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch up to 10 inches, and they will finish their movement right here. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up to 12 inches behind the Plague Drones. And he will finish his movement very wobbly right here behind the Plague Drones, and he will probably fall over. This squad of Plague Bearers is going to move up the board up to 5 inches towards the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. And they will all finish up like so over here. The Plague Bearer Sergeant sitting right on top of Objective Marker 4. Not that that helps in this turn, but this means now there is a pathway so that this Great Unclean One with the Doomsday Bell and Plague Flail can move up the board up to 7 inches. And he will finish his movement right here. Thanks to how the Plague Bearers moved around, Rodigus has kind of been boxed in, and so he will remain still. The Chaos Demons of Nurgle are now going to use the stratagem, Revolting Regeneration, for 2 command points, bring them from 7 down to 5. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one of your Nurgle demon units. One model in that unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in the unit, and that unit has suffered any casualties, a single slain model from the unit is returned to play with 1 wound remaining. And so the target will be this Plague Drone squad, because this Plague Drone in the back has lost half of its wounds and is down to 2, so it will get D3 lost wounds back. So Nurgle is hoping for at least a 3, and they get it. So getting 2 wounds back thanks to the D3, which will bring that Plague Drone back to full health. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, this Demon Prince of Nurgle will start by casting Smite onto this squad of Screamers. Looking for a 5, and gets it with a 5. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is within 24 inches, and so he will attempt to deny the Witch, and getting a 10 thanks to a Psychic Test bonus, so it will not go off. Now the second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword because it is slightly closer to the Demon Prince than Kairos Fateweaver. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he does get it with a 6. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will use its second and final Deny the Witch test, and does with a 12, so it will not go off. Next, Rodigus will attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto this Plague Drone squad, because there is one model that it has lost a wound, and they are just within 18 inches. Fleshy Abundance has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 9. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to deny the Witch, needing at least a 10, and fails by rolling a 9. However, they are going to use a command point, going from 6 down to 5 in order to re-roll the 1. And so here's the re-roll, and only getting a 2. But that does mean after the Psychic Test bonus it becomes a 10, which means it does successfully deny the Witch, because Rodigus only rolled a 9. Rodigus will then attempt Miasma of Pestilence onto the other Great Unclean One. Miasma of Pestilence has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with an 8. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to deny the Witch, and he does with a 10, thanks to a Psychic Test bonus. Next, this Great Unclean One is going to attempt to manifest Smite and Stream of Corruption onto this squad of Screamers. Starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7. and it fails to go off with a 6. Now for Stream of Corruption, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with an 8. Kairos Fateweaver is within 24 inches, and so he will attempt to deny the witch, and he does with a 12. Finally, this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of pink horrors because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and he fails with a 6. Going into the shooting phase, this Great Unclean One is going to fire his Plague Flail onto the Screamers. 3 shots hitting on 3s and getting 2 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s and getting 1 wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. Next, this squad of Plague Drones is going to fire all of its Death's Heads into this squad of pink horrors. Now that they're back up to full strength, 12 shots, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s thanks to themselves, and getting 5 wounds. And there were 2 6s in that wound roll, which thanks to the Demon Prince and his Locus of Virulence being within 6 inches of them, it will inflict an additional damage piece, so it will be important to do that separate. So first, the 2 wounds that will do double damage, 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. And not that it actually matters against pink horrors because they're 1 wound apiece. And then the 3 regular wounds, 4-up invulns, and failing 1 of those as well. So 2 dead pink horrors. And so 2 pink horrors at the back will go down. Finally, this squad of Plague Drones is going to fire all of their Death's Heads into Kairos Fateweaver. 12 shots, hitting on 4s. Rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. And that's a lot of 6s. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more hit for 7 hits total. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s. And getting a 6 and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting another 6, which is double damage. So 2 4-up invulnerable saves, failing both, and thanks to the double damage, that is 4 damage total. And because of that, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 5 down to 4, in order to reroll that 3. They're going to try and save themselves 2 damage in rerolling, and still fail. So 4 damage. So Kairos Fateweaver, the Warlord, will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 12. Going into the assault phase for Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1, there are many charges to declare. Demon Prince of Nurgle with Wings will declare a charge onto the Screamers. Plague Drones will declare multi-charge onto the Screamers and the Pink Horrors, with the Pink Horrors being the primary target. Great Unclean One in the back will declare a charge onto the Pink Horrors. This squad of Plague Drones will declare a multi-charge into Kairos Fateweaver and the Lord of Change. This Demon Prince will declare a charge onto the Lord of Change. This Great Unclean One will declare a charge onto the Screamers, and the Plague Bearers are going to declare a charge onto the Screamers. We will start with the Great Unclean One. No Overwatch from the Screamers, so here's the charge distance, getting 8 inches, which will get him into combat. The Great Unclean One is now locked in combat with the Screamers. Next, we will do the charge from these Plague Bearers. And here's their charge distance, getting 3 inches. And luckily for them, the Plague Bearer Sergeant is just under 4 inches away, base to base, from the closest Screamer, which means 3 inches will make it into combat. And the Plague Bearers are now locked in combat with the Screamers. Next, we will do the Demon Prince into this squad of Screamers, and there is no Overwatch there. And here's the charge distance, rolling a 9. And base to base with the Screamers, he is only 6.5 inches away, so that is more than enough to make it in. And he will make it into combat right here, slightly wobbly thanks to the Ruin. Now the Plague Drones will make their multi-charge, and we will resolve the Pink Horrors Overwatch. The Pink Horrors are down to 8 models, so only 16 shots, hitting on 6s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, getting 4 hits and 4 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, failing to get any more hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, but Flickering Flames is still active, and so therefore wounding on 4s. And that did not make a difference, getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, and failing both. 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 1, taking 1 damage. So 1 Plague Drone will drop from 4 starting wounds down to 3 left. And here's their charge distance, rolling a 7-inch charge. More than enough. And they get to add 1 to their charge roll because they have an instrument in the squad anyways. So with 8 inches of charge, they are definitely in. And so all of the plague drones ended up in combat with the instrument effectively in base-to-base with the Screamer squad, the Icon, and the Sergeant in base-to-base with the Pink Horrors. The Sergeant's also in base-to-base with the Screamers, however. And then the 3 regular plague drones in the back are within an inch of either the Icon, the Sergeant, or the Instrument, so everyone will be in combat. The Instrument on this ruin here is incredibly wobbly, and so he will probably fall over, in which case they will set him off to the side, but he is on the platform on the ruin. Next, this Great Unclean One is going to declare charge into this squad of Pink Horrors. He does not need to charge through a crater to get to them, and he is about 8.5 inches away, so therefore he will need an 8-inch charge to make it in. So here's the charge roll. Getting 5 inches, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to risk everything using 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 5 down to 4 in order to reroll the 2. So here's the reroll, looking for at least a 5, and they get it, getting the 8 inches. And so this Great Unclean One makes it into combat with the Pink Horrors. Next, we will do the Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, charging into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. No Overwatch, so here's the charge distance, getting 7 inches, but unfortunately for him, he is 8.5 inches away as well, and therefore does not make it in, and they cannot reroll it. Finally, the Plague Drones will charge. Once again, no Overwatch, but they do have an instrument, so they get to add 1 to their charge roll. So here's their charge distance. They are charging through the crater, so subtracting 2, which means they end up with a total charge range of 4 inches. And the models at the front of the squad are less than 4 inches away, which means they will definitely make it into combat. And so now they are locked in combat, and everyone will be involved because everyone's either within an inch of an enemy model or within an inch of a friendly model who's within an inch of an enemy model, so therefore everyone will get to attack. These 4 will be attacking Kairos Fateweaver, whereas this one is only within an inch of the Lord of Change, and therefore the guy behind him and the instrument will have to attack the Lord of Change. Luckily for them, they are still within 6 inches of the Demon Prince in order to reroll failed hit rolls of 1. And so both armies, because they're both Chaos Demons armies, are going to use the stratagem Warp Surge for 2 command points. And since both armies are currently at 4 command points, both armies will go from 4 command points down to 2 left. Use this stratagem at the start of any phase. Select a unit of demons. Until the end of the phase, you cannot re-roll saving throws for this unit, but its invulnerable save is improved by 1 to a maximum of 3 up. And so the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will be selecting Kairos Fateweaver to improve his invulnerable save, while the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will select this squad of Plague Drones in combat with Kairos Fateweaver to improve their invulnerable save to a 4 up. And before I forget, since it's technically supposed to happen at the end of the assault phase, but we'll allow it to go through, we have to resolve both Great Unclean Ones crushing bulk, since they both successfully made charges. So we have this one against the Screamers, and the other Great Unclean One with corruption successfully charged the Pink Horrors. So we'll start with this one, and then we'll do the other one. So the Great Unclean One against the Screamers on a 4 up, and it does not happen. Great Unclean One against the Pink Horrors, and it will go through with 1 mortal wound. And so 1 Pink Horror will go down, leaving 7 models left alive in that squad. So now going into the actual fight phase, after of course using the stratagem Warp Surge for both armies, this squad of Plague Drones is going to attack first. So the Plague Drones have 2 sets of attacks. First is the Riders with their Plague Swords, and the second set is the Rot Flies attacking with their Prehensile Proboscises. So we will first resolve the 4 Plague Drones against Kairos, and then the 2 against the Lord of Change. And the Riders don't actually have very many attacks, so the 4 against Kairos, counting the Sergeant, have a total of 5 attacks with their Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, and getting 1 hit and 1 re-roll. And here's the re-roll. Still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, but re-rolling everything. And getting a re-roll. And here's the re-roll, which gets a wound. 1 3 up invulnerable save, which fails and cannot be re-rolled. so 1 damage. So Kairos Fate Weaver will drop from 12 wounds down to 11. So now the mounts will attack, and they get 4 additional attacks apiece. So 16 attacks, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and that's a little bit better with 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice. Still fails to hit. So getting 8 hits and 3 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls, getting 2 more hits. These are Strength 4, 2 damage apiece, against the Toughness 7 from Kairos, which means they wound on 5s, but 6s will do 3 damage instead of 2, since the Locus of Virulence from the Demon Prince grants 1 additional damage apiece. So looking for 5 ups. And that's a horrible, horrible roll. But, per the Prehensile Proboscis' special ability, you can re-roll failed wound rolls for these attacks. So, all get to be re-rolled. Looking for 5 ups, and that's not much better. Getting 4 wounds total, but 2 of them are 2 damage apiece and 2 of them are 3 damage apiece. So the invulns against the 2 damage weapons, and both of those passed. 3-up invulns against the 3 damage weapons, and both of those failed. Oh, wow. And they are not allowed to re-roll. So that is 6 damage, and that will take Kairos Fate Weaver from 11 wounds down to 5 left. Now the 2 Plague Sword attacks against the Lord of Change, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 5, re-rolling thanks to being the Plague Sword, and here's the re-roll. Still failing to wound. 8 attacks from the Rot Flies, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s. Getting 2 hits and 2 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. And getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, re-rolling everything. Getting 1 wound and 3 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Getting 1 additional wound, which is also a 6. So, 3-up invulnerable save against the 2 damage attack, which goes through. And 3-up invulnerable save against the 3 damage attack, which passes. So just 2 damage. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 14. Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are now going to use their last 2 command points for the stratagem counteroffensive, taking them from 2 down to 0. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged is fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. And so the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will select this squad of Screamers to strike back against the Great Unclean One and the Plague Bearers first. But first they will pile in. And so these 4 Screamers are within an inch of the Great Unclean One, but the one on the end is also in contact with the Sergeant from the Plague Bearer squad, and these 2 are only in contact with the Sergeant from the Plague Bearer squad. So these 3 will strike the Plague Bearers, and these 3 will strike the Great Unclean One. So 9 attacks against the Plague Bearers first, hitting on 4s, and getting 3 hits. They are over 6 inches away from the Demon Prince, of course, so no rerolls. Strength 6 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, and getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. But they're 2 damage apiece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls. Passing 1 and failing 1, but they still lose 1 model. And so the Plague Bearer at the very back will go down. 9 attacks against the Great Unclean One, hitting on 4s, getting 4 hits and 5 misses. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. Now that the Screamers are done attacking, the Great Unclean One is going to get his revenge and strike back against the Screamers. So the Great Unclean One will have 5 attacks with his Doomsday Bell against the Screamers, hitting on 2s, and getting 5 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 2s, and getting 5 wounds. And 2 of those wound rolls were 6s, which added damage. However, thinking about that, I just realized that I had forgotten to do the Locus for Tzeentch. So we should do that a second before we go any further. So we rolled 2 dice, taking away the highest, and it really did not matter. Hit rolls of 1 do not count against the Tzeentch models. Well, what do you know, they didn't anyways, so that's worthless. So luckily, we don't have to go back and do anything. Hooray! So I will try to remember that in the next fight phase, because that could potentially be very important. Luckily, it was not this time. So, Screamers have a 4-up invulnerable save. First, against the 2 that will do an extra damage. And both of those passed. Alright, now against the 3 that will do normal damage. And And rolling a triple 1, of course, so all 3 go through. And the Screamers are 2 wounds apiece, which means we have to do these separate since they are D3 damage apiece. So rolling them separately, strike number 1 will kill off a Screamer. Strike number 2 will only do 1 damage to a Screamer, which means, of course, that only finishes off a second Screamer. So 7 damage total, but only killing 4 wounds. And so 2 Screamers will be removed. Now for the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, we'll do D6 additional attacks. It will do 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 6s and re-rolling 1s, and getting 1/6. Which of course will do 2 damage if it goes through, but a 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. So now the Plague Bearers will pile in and then fight. This Sergeant is not in base-to-base contact with the Screamer, and therefore he is able to pile in to get a little bit further up so that the Plague Bearers can move into combat. So the squad of 9 has moved up, and these 3 are within an inch of the Screamer, including the Sergeant, and this guy in the back is within an inch of this guy who's within an inch, so there will be 4 models in combat total. And since one of them is the Sergeant, 5 attacks total with their Plague Swords, hitting on 4s. Wow, and getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on a 4, and re-rolling thanks to being a Plague Sword. And here's the re-roll, and getting a 6, which is double damage, meaning 2 instead of 1. So 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. And so now they will consolidate more, although these 2 are in base to base, so only this guy and everyone behind him are actually able to move. And so now they're piled in a little bit more. Next, this Great Unclean One is going to strike against the Pink Horrors. 5 attacks with Corruption onto the Pink Horrors, hitting on 2s, and getting 5 hits. Strength 9 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, re-rolling 1s thanks to itself. And here's the re-rolls, getting 5 wounds, and one of them is a 6. Not that that matters, because the Pink Horrors are only 1 wound anyways, and Corruption is D3 damage apiece. So since it won't make a difference on how many models are removed, I'm going to roll them all together. 5 4-up invulnerable saves. Wow, I'm passing 3, only failing 2. And so 2 regular Pink Horrors will go down. Now for the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, an additional D6 attacks, doing 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 2 hits, wounding on 5s, re-rolling 1s, and failing to wound. Now this Demon Prince will strike against the Screamers. 7 attacks with its 2 sets of Malefic Talons, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 re-rolls. And here's the 2 re-rolls, getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s. That's a lot of 2s. Getting 3 wounds, one of them is a 6, but that doesn't actually matter in this instance because they are 2 damage apiece to begin with, and Screamers only have 2 wounds apiece total. So we can roll it all together looking for 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. So 1 Screamer will go down. So finally on the Chaos Demon of Nurgle side, the Plague Drones will attack, and they will have 4 models, including the Sergeant, striking against the Screamers, and then 2 models striking against the Pink Horrors. So the 4 Plague Drones, including the Sergeant, against the Screamers, starting with the Plague Swords. 5 attacks, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on a 4, re-rolling. And here's the re-roll, getting a wound, and it's a 6, so it will do 2 damage if it goes through instead of 1. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. And now the 16 attacks from the mounts, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s. And that was really good, getting 10 hits and 4 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls, getting 2 more hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, re-rolling. And that was really good, getting 10 wounds and 2 re-rolls. And here's the 2 re-rolls, getting 1 more wound, which is also a 6. So 11 wounds total, with 2 of them being 6s, which add a damage. However, they already start at 2 damage apiece, and the Screamers only have 2 wounds apiece, so that won't actually matter, which means we can roll them all together. So 11 4-up invulnerable saves, and that's a lot of fails. getting 10 fails. So much for a 4-up invuln. And so those 10 fails do 20 damage. Not that that matters because there's only 5 models with a total of 10 wounds left, but they could have been 1 damage apiece and that still would have wiped out the rest of the squad. And that is actually first blood for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. So now for the 2 Plague Drones against the Pink Horrors, starting with the 2 Plague Swords. Hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll. And here's the reroll. Getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means 3s to wound, rerolling, and getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. And so 1 more regular Pink Horror will go down. And so now the 8 attacks from the Rot Flies, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. Getting a 5th hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means 3s to wound, rerolling, and getting 4 wounds, including 2 6s and a reroll. And here's the reroll, which also wounds. The extra damage won't actually matter because they're only 1 wound apiece. So 5 4-up invulnerable saves, and fails 4 of them. And there's only 4 models left alive in the squad, and so that Pink Horror squad is completely wiped out. And so now the Plague Drone squad will consolidate. The models in front repositioned slightly after consolidating, mostly so that this unit would no longer be super wobbly on top of the ruin, and this way they can be that much further up the board. So now all of the Chaos Demon of Nurgle units have gone, which means that the only models left to fight is the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and Kairos Fateweaver, both of which are attacking the Plague Drones. So we will start with the Lord of Change. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword has 5 attacks base, and he will use all 5 attacks against the Plague Drones with the Staff of Tzeentch, because either way he will be wounding on 3s. Using the Baleful Sword will not let him wound on a 2. And this way he will hit better, hitting on 2s instead of a 3. And this way it is always guaranteed 3 damage apiece instead of rolling randomly on a d6 and possibly just getting a 1 or a 2. Which will be important because the Plague Drones have disgustingly resilient. So 5 attacks with the Staff of Tzeentch, hitting on 2s. And that makes a difference. Rolling a 2, getting 4 hits and 1 miss. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Getting 2 wounds, 1 failed, and 1 cocked dice. So re-rolling the cocked dice and getting a wound. Thanks to the stratagem Warp Surge, 3 4-up invulnerable saves. Passing 1, failing 2. Did not help. And they are 3 damage apiece, but we have to do them separately because the damage does not carry over from model to model. So the first strike, 3 disgustingly resilient, and passes 1, of course. And there was 1 Plague Drone that had lost a wound from a previous turn and was only down to 3 wounds, but by passing that 1, he is still alive with 1 wound left, and therefore, second and final strike can at best just finish him off. So here's the second strike. And he fails all 3, of course, but that only does 1 additional wound. And so the Plague Drone that's down to 3 wounds loses his final 3 wounds and is removed. So Kairos Fateweaver, since he's down to 5 wounds, has only 3 attacks with the Staff of Tomorrow, hitting on 3s, getting 1 hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on a 3, and he fails to wound, so no damage. So going into the morale phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle, turn 1, this squad only lost the 1 model over here, and they are within 6 inches of a Great Unclean One, which means they can use his leadership of 10, which means it's impossible to fail. But thanks to their icon, they are still going to roll, because on a roll of a 1, they get a model back. And so here's their morale check roll, rolling a 2. So no models are returned, but they passed. Next, this Plague Bearer squad lost 1 model this turn, and since they have a leadership of 7, they wouldn't be able to fail that anyways. However, since they are within 6 inches of a Great Unclean One, they actually have a leadership of 10, or they can use his leadership of 10, and it would be impossible to fail. So 1 model was lost, but that's it. Finally, the Screamers lost 2 models. However, they are also within 6 inches of a greater demon from their side, so they have a leadership of 10, and therefore it is impossible for them to fail a morale check. So now we'll take a quick look at the tactical objective cards. They failed to secure objective 2 as that's in the Tzeentch deployment zone. We will roll a dice to see if they complete the great game, but they did completely kill off 2 units in the fight phase, and so therefore they get 1 victory point for blood and guts. So now they will roll for the great game. Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are currently holding 3 objective markers, so if they roll a 3, they will complete it for 3 victory points. And they do! Look at that! So they will get 3 victory points for that. And since objective marker 2 is within the Tzeentch deployment zone currently being held by a squad of pink horrors, the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are going to elect to throw away secure objective 2. Which means, of course, that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have cleared their board, and therefore, at the beginning of their turn 2, they will get to draw 3 brand new tactical objective cards.
And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1, thanks to First Blood, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle hold 5 victory points, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch hold 7 victory points. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 2 command points available.
Also a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch held on to the tactical objective card Scour the Skies from the previous turn, and so they needed to draw 2 new tactical objective cards, and they drew Defend Objective 3, score 2 victory points if you control objective marker 3 at the end of 2 consecutive turns, and Defend Objective 5, score 2 victory points if you control objective marker 5 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And objective marker 3 is this one right here within the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle deployment zone, currently being held by a squad of Plague Bearers, and objective marker 5 is right back in here, currently being held by a squad of pink horrors. So going into the movement phase, for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, this squad of pink horrors sitting on objective marker 5 will remain still. This squad of pink horrors sitting on objective marker 2 will also remain still. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is going to remain blocked in combat with the Plague Drones. Kairos Fateweaver, who is now down to 5 wounds, is going to fall back out of combat up to 8 inches away, since that is his new movement now that he's down to 5 wounds. And Kairos Fateweaver will fall back to here. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up to 12 inches over to this other side of the Plague Drones and the Demon Prince of Nurgle. And he will end up right here, about 1.5 inches away from this Plague Drone, which is down to 3 wounds, and just under 2 inches away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle. This squad of Screamers is going to remain locked in combat with the Great Unclean One and the Plague Bearer squad. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up to 12 inches up the board in order to get closer to the Plague Bearers. And he will end up right here, and he is now just over 1 inch away from the Plague Bearer squad. Finally, the Lord of Change with the Rod of Sorcery and the Everstab is going to remain still. Going into the Psychic phase, for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, we will begin with this Demon Prince of Tzeentch, which will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plague Bearers. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with an 8. Rodigus will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 9, and fails to get it. So the Smite will go off, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both of them. So 2 of the Plague Bearers will go down, leaving 7 left alive in the squad. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plague Drones because they are slightly closer than the Demon Prince. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he does get it with a 6. The Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings that's right in front of him will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 7, and fails to get it, so it will go off. The Smite will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1, but failing 2. And so this Plague Drone right here, which is already down to only 3 out of 4 wounds, will drop from 3 wounds down to 1 left. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plague Drones that he is in combat with, and he will also attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto himself. So starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7, and he does get it with a 9 thanks to his Psychic Test bonus. The other Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to deny the Witch. looking for at least a 10 and fails to get it. So it will go off. And it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 2 of them. So 1 plague drone will drop from 4 starting wounds down to 3 left. Now for Boon of Change, which has a warp charge value of 7 as well, and he gets that with a 12. So that will be impossible for Nurgle to deny. So we'll go off and rolling a D3 on the table, getting a 2, which will give the Lord of Change +1 strength until the start of the next Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch Psychic phase. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstab will now go next, and he will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plague Drones that are in combat with the other Lord of Change, because they are actually slightly closer than either the Plague Bears or the Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail, and the Lord of Change is able to see the Plague Drones through the ruin. So Smite onto the Plague Drones, and then also will attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate. So starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 8. However, he does get to add 2 thanks to his Psychic test bonus and an additional 1 thanks to his Everstab. However, even with the +3 thanks to his various bonuses, he still only rolled a 7 and therefore failed to get off Smite. Now for Gaze of Fate, which he gets with the Perils. And so it will go off, because he will survive the perils of the warp, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But he will take D3 mortal wounds, and he will take 2 mortal wounds. So the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 14. Finally, Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to manifest some psychic powers, and he will attempt to manifest Smite and Infernal Gateway onto the Plague Drones that he just left combat with, and he will also attempt to manifest Bolt of Change onto the other squad of Plague Drones, the one that he did not just leave combat with. Starting with Bolt of Change, which has a warp charge value of 8, and he does get it with a 10 thanks to a +1 Psychic test bonus now that he's down to 5 wounds. The Great Unclean One will attempt to deny the Witch, and fails with the double 1. And that was the Great Unclean One with Corruption, who attempted to deny the Witch. And so we'll do D3 mortal wounds, and it will of course do just 1 mortal wound. But the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use their 1 reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate in order to reroll that 1. So here's the reroll on the mortal wounds, and still only getting 1 mortal wound. So 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. And so that will kill off the final wound on this 1 Plague Drone in the back. Now for Smite, which has a warp charge value of 9. And he rolls double 6s, so it cannot be denied. It will cause perils of the warp, and it will do D6 mortal wounds onto the Plague Drones. But first, on a 2-up, does Kairos actually suffer perils of the warp? And he does not, thanks to his Warlord trait, Mastery of the Warp. So Kairos will not suffer perils, and it will do D6 mortal wounds. And it will do 6 mortal wounds onto the Plague Drones. 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and only passing 1 of them, failing 5. And so the Plague Drone at the back, that's already down to 3 wounds, will suffer 3 of those mortal wounds and be killed off, which means that the other regular Plague Drone will take the final 2 mortal wounds and go from 4 starting wounds down to 2 left. Now for Infernal Gateway, which has a warp charge value of 8. And that will definitely fail, getting only +1 thanks to a Psychic test bonus, and so that will not go off. Going into the shooting phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, there are no units that are able to fire that are also within 18 inches of an unengaged enemy model. Going into the assault phase, there are 2 charges to declare. First is this Chaos Demon Prince of Tzeentch, who is declaring a charge onto the Plague Bearers. There's no Overwatch, since they have no shooting attacks and they're already locked in combat, and since he is just over an inch away, he will automatically make it into combat. And so the Demon Prince of Tzeentch is now locked in combat with the Plague Bearers. The other charge is this Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to declare charge into the Demon Prince of Nurgle, and thanks to the 1 Plague Drone being killed off, the Demon Prince of Tzeentch does not want to declare multi-charge, and since he is under 2 inches away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle, he will automatically make it in as well. No Overwatch. And so he is now within an inch and locked in combat. So going into the fight phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, we will begin with this Demon Prince attacking the Demon Prince of Nurgle. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 re-rolls. And here's the 2 re-rolls, getting 2 more hits. And I just remembered that we need to activate Tzeentch's loci now at the beginning of the fight phase. So rolling 2 dice, taking away the highest, and that could actually be important. So hit rolls of 3 against Tzeentch models with the loci will not count. And so that is all of the Tzeentch characters and any other Tzeentch friendly models within 6 inches. So Nurgle will not be able to hit on 3s. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s and getting 5 wounds. 5 up and vulnerable saves. Passing 2, failing 3. And they are 2 damage apiece, so 6 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls. And passing 2 of those, failing 4. So this Demon Prince of Nurgle will drop from 8 starting wounds down to 4 left. Now the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use their final 2 command points, going from 2 down to 0, in order to use the stratagem counteroffensive. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged has fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to choose this squad of Plague Drones to pile in and fight against the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword next. And so now everyone is either within an inch or within an inch of someone who's within an inch of the combat, so everyone will be able to fight. There are 4 Plague Drones left alive in the squad, however one of them is the Sergeant, so 5 attacks with their Plague Swords. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 4 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, re-rolling, getting 1 wound and 3 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Getting 1 more wound, and both of the wounds are 6s, which means they will do an extra damage apiece if they go through. So 2 3 up and vulnerable saves, and passing both. Now for 16 attacks from the mounts. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 8 hits and 4 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls, getting 1 more hit. Wounding on 5s, re-rolling, all fails. Wow, and that's a lot of 6s. Getting 5 wounds and 4 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. And getting 2 more wounds. So in total, there's 3 2 damage wounds and 4 3 damage wounds. Starting with the 3 2 damage wounds, 3 up and vulnerable saves, passing 2, failing 1. So that's 2 damage that's gone through so far. And then the 4 3 damage wounds, 3 up and vulnerable saves, and 3 of those failed. So that's an extra 9 damage, which means 11 damage total. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will drop from 14 wounds down to 3 left. Next, the other Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attack the Plague Bearers. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, and getting 5 wounds. 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 2, failing 3. And they are 2 damage apiece on 1 wound models. They have to be done separately, so strike number 1 will kill a Plague Bearer after passing 1 and failing 1 disgustingly resilient roll. Strike number 2 for disgustingly resilient passes both, and strike number 3 passes 1 and fails 1, so a second Plague Bearer will go down. So 2 more Plague Bearers will go down, leaving 5 models left alive in the squad. So now that all of the charging units have gone, the armies will alternate back and forth with any other units that were locked in combat or that were charged this turn, starting with Tzeentch since it is their turn. And because the Plague Drones have already fought against the Lord of Change is in no hurry to strike back, because he doesn't have to worry about being attacked anymore this turn, which means the Screamers will go next for Tzeentch. All 4 Screamers are going to place all of their attacks onto the Great Unclean One, and they are 3 attacks apiece, so 12 attacks total, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s now that the Demon Prince is there, and that is a great roll. Getting 8 hits, 2 re-rolls, 2 definite misses. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 2 more hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s. And after all of that, getting only 2 wounds. 2 5-up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. And they are 2 damage apiece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. And so the Great Unclean One will drop from 18 starting wounds down to 17. So now the Great Unclean One will strike back against the Screamers. 5 attacks with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s and getting 4 hits. No rerolls because he's not close enough to the Demon Prince of Nurgle. Strength 8 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 2s and getting 4 wounds. One of them is a 6. So 4-up invuln against the wound that will do extra damage, which will go through, of course, and then the 4-up invuln against the 3 normal wounds, and one of those fails as well. And so the wound from the Doomsday Bell that rolled a 6, so it gets +1 damage, does D3 damage normally, so D3 +1, but the Screamers are only 2 wounds apiece, and so that wound will do a minimum of 2 damage, which means it will automatically kill off 1 Screamer, but only 1 Screamer, which means we only have to roll the D3 damage for the normal wound. And that will do 3 damage as well, but once again, only kills off 1 additional Screamer. So 2 of the 4 remaining Screamers will go down, leaving 2 left alive in the squad. And now the Attendant's Claws and Teeth will attack from the Great Unclean One. D6 additional attacks, getting just 1 attack, hitting on a 2, and it hits, but it does not hit because 3s don't count, thanks to the Loci from Tzeentch. So never mind. That does nothing. Now the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, who is now down to 3 wounds, will strike against the Plague Drones. Either way, against the Plague Drones, he will only be able to wound on 3s, regardless of whether he uses his Staff of Tzeentch or the Baleful Sword. Therefore, he will use the Staff of Tzeentch because it will be easier to hit. So 3 attacks hitting on 2s. It actually wouldn't have mattered. So getting 2 hits. Wounding on 3s. And getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up and honorable saves. And passing both. So the Lord of Change does absolutely nothing. Now the Plague Bearers will pile in and fight against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. And now all 5 models, including the Sergeant, who is hiding behind the wing over here, are now all perfectly in base-to-base with the Demon Prince of Tzeentch and will be able to fight. Thanks to the Sergeant, 6 attacks with the Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, no rerolls, and that is an awful, awful, awful roll. Getting just 1 hit. Wounding on a 5, but rerolling thanks to being a Plague Sword, and it fails to wound. Here's the reroll, and it still fails to wound. And now the only unit left that has not fought this fight phase is the Demon Prince of Nurgle, who will now strike back against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. 7 attacks base, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, rolling 2 3s, which don't count, of course. So just 5 hits, wounding on 3s, and getting 4 wounds. 4-up and vulnerable saves. And he fails all 4 of them! And he fails all 4 of them! And they are 2 damage apiece. So that is 8 damage. And the Demon Prince of Tzeentch only has 8 starting wounds. So the Demon Prince of Nurgle, with a wild strike from his Malefic Talons, straight up slays the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle will not consolidate because he's already perilously placed on that ruin, and he just wants to move up the board more. So, going into the morale phase, we're just going to go straight down the line because both sides took some casualties this turn. Starting with this Plague Bearer squad, they lost 4 models this turn, however, they are within 6 inches of that Great Unclean One, who is a greater demon, and therefore they can use this leadership of 10, which means it is impossible for them to fail a morale check after losing only 4 models, and they don't have a banner, or an icon I should say, which would potentially give them models back, and so therefore they are not going to take a morale check, because there's no point. Whatever they roll, they will pass, but nothing will happen. Moving on to the Screamers, they lost 2 models this turn, however, they have the same issue, or same benefit maybe I should say, as the Plague Bearers, in that they are within 6 inches of a greater demon from their side, and so therefore they get to use the Lord of Change's leadership of 10, which means it is impossible to to fail after only losing 2 models. This squad of plague drones in combat with the Lord of Change lost 1 model this turn. However, they are within 6 inches of a Great Unclean One with a leadership of 10, and therefore it's impossible to fail, but they do have a demonic icon, which means if they roll a 1, they will get a slain model back. And so here's the dice roll for the demonic icon, and it does not get a 1, which means that nothing happens. They pass their morale check, but nothing happens. Finally, the other squad of plague drones also lost a single model this turn, and they have the same situation. It's impossible for them to fail morale check, but they have a demonic icon, and therefore on a roll of 1, they will get a slain model back. So here's their morale check roll, and they roll a 4 as well. So they will not get any models back either. So now taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch failed to complete Scour the Skies. They failed to complete Defend Objective 3, and they are now 1 turn into defending Objective 5. So they will hold on to Scour the Skies and Defend Objective 5, and they will toss Defend Objective 3 because that is within the Nurgle deployment zone.
And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 2, the score currently sits at 7 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch and 5 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available as well.
Also a reminder that at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, turn 1, they cleared the board, either by completing or discarding any active tactical objectives, and so they will get to draw 3 new tactical objective cards. So the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle drew Secure Objective 1, score 1 victory point if you control Objective Marker 1 at the end of your turn. Psychological Warfare, score 1 victory point if your opponent failed a morale test during this turn. If your opponent failed 3 or more morale tests, score D3 victory points instead. And Defend Objective 3, score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 3 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And Objective Marker 1 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Plague Bearers. And Objective Marker 3 is this one right here, also currently being held by a squad of Plague Bearers. And at the start of the turn, thanks to the special rule Reverberating Summons, thanks to the Great Unclean Ones armed with Doomsday Bells, I get to roll a dice for each friendly Nurgle demon unit within 7 inches of a Great Unclean One with a Doomsday Bell, and on a 4-up, a slain model is returned to the unit. So this Plague Drone squad will get to roll, this Plague Drone squad will get to roll, and the Plague Bearer squad will also get to roll. So first, the Plague Bearer squad on a 4-up, and they do not get a model back. Now the Plague Drone squad that's in combat with the Lord of Change, they will not get a Plague Drone back. And the second Plague Drone squad, the one that's not in combat, will get a Plague Drone back. So this is the Plague Drone that's been returned to the squad, and now the squad is back up to full strength. All of the models are fully healthy. So going into the movement phase, this squad of Plague Bearers sitting on Objective Marker 3 will remain still. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on Objective Marker 1 will also remain still. Rodigus is going to move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. This Great Unclean One is going to remain locked in combat with the 2 Screamers. This squad of Plague Bearers will remain locked in combat with the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. This squad of Plague Drones is going to remain locked in combat with the Lord of Change. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is going to move up to 12 inches across this ruin here in order to deal with, or help deal with, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. And the Demon Prince will end up right there. Next, this Great Unclean One is going to move up to 7 inches to be closer to the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword in order to be able to charge. And the Great Unclean One is now just over an inch away. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is going to move up to 12 inches over in that direction in order to also be able to help engage the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. And he will end up right here. Finally, this full squad of 6 Plague Drones is going to move up the board up to 10 inches towards the Tzeentch deployment zone. And they will also declare an advance. Thanks to their instrument, they get to add 1 to their advance roll, and they roll a 2, so they get 3 inches of advance for 13 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement all right here with this model, and this model being very wobbly on the craters. Going into the Psychic phase, for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, we will begin with this Demon Prince of Nurgle, attempting to manifest Smite onto this squad of Screamers. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 7. The Lord of Change, with Rod of Sorcery, will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least an 8, and fails with double 1s, which becomes a 4 thanks to a Psychic test bonus. But the Smite will actually go off, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and of course it does 3 mortal wounds. So one Screamer is killed off, and the other Screamer is reduced from 2 starting wounds down to 1 left. The Great Unclean One with Plague Flail is now going to attempt to manifest Nurgle's Rot. And Nurgle's Rot has a warp charge value of 7, and he gets it with a 10. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt its second and final Deny the Witch test, looking for at least an 11, and he gets a 13, so Nurgle's Rot will fail to go off. The Great Unclean One will then attempt to manifest Smite onto the final Screamer. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he fails with a 4. This Demon Prince of Nurgle will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and he fails with a 6. This Great Unclean One will now attempt to manifest Stream of Corruption onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. Stream of Corruption has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 6. Kairos Fateweaver will attempt a Deny the Witch test with +1 to the test, which means he gets an 8, so Stream of Corruption is denied. The Great Unclean One will now attempt to manifest Smite into the same Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and he does get it with an 8. Kairos Fateweaver will use his second Deny the Witch, and he passes with a 9 thanks to still having +1 Psychic test bonus. Rodigus is now going to attempt to manifest Miasma of Pestilence onto the Plague Bearers, and he will also attempt to manifest Virulent Blessing onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle. Starting with Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with the 6. Kairos Fateweaver will use his third and final Deny the Witch test, and passes the Deny the Witch with the 12 thanks to a Psychic test bonus, so it will not go off. Now for Virulent Blessing onto the Demon Prince, which has a warp charge value of 7, and he gets that with an 11. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, who is still alive and in combat with the Plague Bearers, will attempt to Deny the Witch, needing a 12, and he gets a 10. So Virulent Blessing will go off for the Demon Prince. So now going into the shooting phase, this squad of Plague Drones has these 2 models on the edge here, just within 12 inches, about 10.5 inches away from Kairos Fateweaver, and they do have assault weapons so that they can shoot even if they advanced. They just have to subtract 1 from hit rolls. And unfortunately for the Plague Drones, they are now over 6 inches away from any Demon Princes. They will not get any rerolls, but the 2 Plague Drones on the end will shoot at Kairos Fateweaver. 4 shots from the 2 Death's Heads, hitting on 5s. Okay, and getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s, and getting a wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. So 1 damage onto Kairos Fateweaver, which will now drop him from 5 wounds down to 4 left. The Great Unclean One is now going to shoot his Plague Flail into the Screamer, since he is allowed to shoot it even if he's within an inch of an enemy unit, and even if that enemy unit is within an inch of friendly units. So 3 shots, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, now being within 6 inches and getting 3 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, and getting 3 wounds, with one of them being a 6, which is +1 damage. Not that that actually matters because he only has 1 wound left. So because of that, we're just going to roll it all together, because a single fail, regardless of how much damage it actually does, which is normally 2, it will kill him off. And of course, the Screamer fails a single invulnerable save and is killed off. So the final wound is removed from the Screamer, and the Screamer is removed from the battlefield. So now going into the assault phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, we have 4 charges to declare. First is this Chaos Demon Prince of Nurgle, declaring a charge onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. Second is this Great Unclean One, now that he is no longer engaged in combat, thanks to killing off the Screamer in the shooting phase, will also declare a charge onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. This Great Unclean One will declare charge into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword in the Impossible Robe, and the second Demon Prince of Nurgle will also declare a charge onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. There is no Overwatch from either Lord of Change, and therefore we will begin with this Great Unclean One because he is just over an inch away, and he does not have to charge through a crater, which means he will automatically make it in. And so now the Great Unclean One is in base to base with the Lord of Change and locked in combat. Next, we will roll for his charge range. And here's the charge range, getting 10 inches, which will definitely be more than enough. And the Demon Prince is now within an inch and locked in combat. Next, we will do the charge from this Demon Prince. And here's the charge range, getting 7 inches. And he is now locked in combat over here in base to base, and he is also now within 6 inches of the Plague Bearers. Finally, we will do this Great Unclean One's charge. And here's the charge distance, getting 6 inches. And the Great Unclean One is now locked in combat as well, so all 4 units made their charges. And at the end of the assault phase, before I forget, we need to roll for the crushing bulk from both Great Unclean Ones because they both made a successful charge. So first, the one that's in combat against the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword on a 4-up, and he does get it. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will suffer 1 mortal wound, going from 3 wounds down to 2 left. And now against the Lord of Change with the Rod of Sorcery, will also suffer a mortal wound, which will drop the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery from 14 wounds down to 13. So now going into the fight phase, we need to resolve the loci from Tzeentch, rolling 2 dice, and this one was a 5 before I did the reroll from the dice going outside. So 5s and 3s, not that it actually matters, because taking away the highest, of course, which means hit rolls of 3 will not count against Tzeentch characters or friendly Tzeentch models within 6 inches of those Tzeentch characters. And so first we will resolve the Demon Prince of Nurgle, attacking the Lord of Change. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Getting a couple 3s in there, unfortunately. So 4 hits, 1 reroll, and 2 3s that have to be removed. And here's the reroll, getting another 2, so 5 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, but adding 1 to the wound rolls thanks to Virulent Blessing. So actually wounding on 3s. That did not help at all, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, but fails both of them, and they are 2 damage apiece, so that is 4 damage. So the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will drop from 13 wounds down to 9 left. Now the Great Unclean One is going to strike against the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. 5 attacks with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. Getting 5 hits, but 3s don't count, so getting 4 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s, and getting 3 wounds. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. And it does D3 damage, and it will do just 1 damage. So the Lord of Change will drop from 9 wounds down to 8 left. Now for the Great Unclean Ones, Attendants, Claws, and Teeth. Getting D6 attacks, getting 2 attacks. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, and getting a wound. So if it goes through, it will do 2 damage instead of 1, but getting a 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. So now, this Demon Prince will strike against the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s. Ouch, and getting 1 wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. So then, the final charging unit, the Great Unclean One, will attack the Lord of Change. 5 attacks with Corruption, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 3 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more hit. Strength 9 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s. And luckily getting to reroll everything, because only getting 1 wound. And here's the rerolls, and that's a lot better. Getting 4 wounds with one of them being 6. And that could actually matter since it's only D3 wounds base and he's got 2 wounds left. So starting with the wound roll of a 6, 3 up invulnerable save, which he passes, and now the 3 normal wounds, and fails one of them. So does the Lord of Change kill itself with a reroll? And it passes the invuln. So it survives with its 2 wounds still. And now the Great Unclean Ones, Attendant's Claws and Teeth will attack. D6 additional attacks, getting 4 attacks. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Getting 2 hits, 1 reroll, and 1 definite miss thanks to the 3. And here's the 1 reroll, which also rolls a 3, of course. So 2 hits, needing 6s to wound. Whoa, and rolling double 6s. And that means they are 2 damage apiece instead of 1, which means the Lord of Change has to pass both invulns in order to survive. So can the Lord of Change make 2 more 3-up invulnerable saves? And it cannot. And so it is slain after delaying the inevitable for 1 attack. And so the Great Unclean Ones, Attendant's Claws and Teeth, scrabble the last 2 wounds off of the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, and he is removed from the battlefield. And so now the Great Unclean One could consolidate if he wished. However, thanks to friendly models, he is actually kind of boxed in and cannot move forward more than maybe a quarter of an inch. So he will elect to stand still. This also means, of course, that the Plague Drones can do nothing in this fight phase. So now going into units that did not charge this turn, we have the Plague Bearers from Nurgle going first, and then the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will be able to strike back. So starting with the Plague Bearers. 6 attacks from the Plague Bearers, including their Sergeant, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. Getting 3 hits, 2 definite misses, and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting another hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. Getting 1 wound and 3 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 2 more wounds for 3 wounds total, with one of them being 2 damage instead of 1. So the 1 4-up invulnerable against the double damage, and it will go through, and the 2 4-ups against the single damage. And one of those will also go through, so 3 damage will go through. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will drop from 8 starting wounds down to 5. And now the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will strike back. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting another hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s. And getting 6 wounds. 6 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 4. And they are 2 damage apiece, so they have to be done separately. So the first strike, for Disgustingly Resilient, will kill 1 model. Strike number 2 also fails both, so a second Plague Bearer will be killed off. Strike number 3 passes 1 and fails 1, so a third Plague Bearer will be killed. And the 4th strike passes both, so a 4th Plague Bearer will not be killed. So 3 regular Plague Bearers will be killed off, which leaves 1 normal Plague Bearer and the Plague Bearer Sergeant alive in the squad. Finally, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will strike back. So the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, because he's down to 8 wounds, only has 4 attacks base instead of 5, and since he's only strength 6, even with the Staff of Tzeentch, he will elect to attack the Demon Prince of Nurgle with all of his attacks. So 4 attacks with the Staff of Tzeentch onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle, hitting on 2s, and he is too far away from his own Demon Prince, so no rerolls. Getting 3 hits. Wounding on 4s. Ooh, and only getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. And it will do an automatic 3 damage, so 3 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, and passing 2, failing 1. So the Demon Prince will drop from 8 starting wounds down to 7. Going into the morale phase, for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, this squad of Plague Bearers lost 3 models this turn. However, they are within 6 inches of a greater demon, which means they can use the leadership of 10. It means it's impossible to fail the morale check after only losing 3 models, and since they don't have a demonic icon, they will not take the morale test. Taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Nurgle did successfully secure Objective 1 for 1 victory point. They failed to complete psychological warfare, and they are now 1 turn into defending objective 3. Because of that, and because of how difficult it will be for people to fail morale checks with all the greater demons around, they will elect to throw away psychological warfare.
And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 2, the score currently sits at 6 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle and 7 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 3, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 0 command points available as well.
Also a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch held on to Scour the Skies and defend Objective 5 from the previous turn, and they are also 1 turn into defending Objective 5, but they drew 1 new tactical objective card, and they drew Defend Objective 2, score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 2 at the end of 2 consecutive turns.
And Objective Marker 2 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of pink horrors, and it's also an objective that they had previously secured in this game. And Objective Marker 5, of course, is this one here in the ruin, currently being held by this squad of pink horrors, and they are 1 turn into holding it. And so at this point, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to elect to concede the game, which will mean we will have a final score in victory points. Not that it actually matters, because it will be a major victory for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle due to a concession. But thanks to this squad of plague drones, especially these ones in the front, they are currently holding Linebreaker, which means we will have a final score of 7 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch and 7 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle. So now that it's been announced that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have conceded the game to the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle with a final score in victory points of 7-7, which is of course Nurgle's favorite number, I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on the game. First and foremost, of course, is the main reason for the concession at this point. Of course, Tzeentch was already 1 turn in to defending Objective 5, which would have given them 2 victory points at the end of this turn, and that's completely true. However, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle also hold a defend objective card, which they are also 1 turn into holding, and therefore that would just tie up the game again at the end of Nurgle turn 3. And while Linebreaker is not assessed until the end of the game, I am including that with the tie, of course. But also just the fact that Kairos Fateweaver, he's now down to 4 wounds, so he's at his lowest distance movement, and so he's not going to be able to run away very far, and he's not going to be very good in close combat. And so if Nurgle is able to catch up, they will very likely get Slay the Warlord, which will of course give them an extra victory point. And of course, while Tzeentch drew a new defend objective card, which they are also currently sitting on, and therefore they would be a turn into holding, the problem is that the squad of plague drones that is currently holding Linebreaker is within easy charge distance of that pink horror squad, which would only be 1 turn into holding the objective for 2 consecutive turns. And there's a very good chance that those plague drones would heavily wipe out those pink horrors, especially since there's no greater demons around and they have no banner, and therefore there's a very good chance they would have to take a morale check and possibly lose more guys. And so at this point, Tzeentch is super close to being tabled, and because I don't feel that they would be able to pull away in terms of victory points and then hide in a corner until the end of turn 5 and possibly win, we might as well end the game now and move on to the next one. Now, I will say, I think part of the problem for why Tzeentch was so heavily destroyed in this battle did have to do with their opening strategy of moving 12 inches up the board with everyone, because Tzeentch is not a close combat heavy army, and that clearly showed in this battle report, and I think that cost them with their greater demons. The Screamers and Demon Princes are meant for close combat, but the Lords of Change not so much. So I would say to fix the strategy for future battle reports would be to have the Demon Princes and Screamers move up, maybe not quite as far right away, but have them move up maybe on one flank together, and then keep the Lords of Change back on a different flank to throw their psychic powers out. Especially since Kairos and the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery have extended length smite powers. They have 30-inch and 36-inch smite powers available to them, thanks to their various abilities and weapons and upgrades. They can sit back and shoot smite and activate other psychic powers just fine. without having to get any closer. And so for Nurgle, it was almost like a giant present for Tzeentch to move up into charge range right away, and that clearly showed. So we'll definitely have to switch up the strategy for Tzeentch in future battle reports so that that doesn't happen again. And speaking of Tzeentch being heavily destroyed, it's very clear within their dead piles, because the Chaos Demons of Nurgle lost a grand total this game of 2 Plague Drones and 8 Plague Bearers. And that's it. 10 models total, and none of them were Greater Demons or Demon Princes. Whereas Tzeentch lost 10 Pink Horrors, all 12 Screamers, 1 Demon Prince, and the Lord of Change with the Baleful Sword and Impossible Robe, all by the end of game turn 2. And so the tide of battle had clearly gone in one direction, and it was not going to pull back the other way. And so at this point, Tzeentch risked being tabled within a couple turns, and so there was no point in continuing the game. So I hope you enjoyed this major victory by the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.